Could I please have the slides on both projectors, and I don't need my face over there, so I need the slides on both sides, please.
All right, well, while you do that, I'll entertain the audience. Some housekeeping matters. We would appreciate if everyone, the presenters especially, if you're on, for the various slots to be on time, because it might lead to the domino effect on the time we go back this evening. Yeah. So if you are late, if your session is half an hour, and if you are late about 5 minutes, you still need to finish within the stipulated time. Okay? You're done? Jonathan, you're done?
I'm trying to get my microphone to work.
All right, Cik Razi? The technical people?
Hello, hello, hello. It's working? Hello, hello, hello.
Just one.
And these new drives, new initiatives, new innovations, we are perhaps in danger of forgetting the one simple ingredient, the one crucial ingredient in the classroom, and that is the teacher. And how does the teacher do their teaching? By and large, through talking. And so we have to not forget how valuable talk is. Now, it's very interesting, in many teacher education programs, we teach our students how not to talk too much. And that's important because, we know that teachers dominate classrooms. You need to? brief interruption while I just adjust things here.
Just in your thumb. It works there better than here. Sorry about that, Jonathan.
Okay, so I'm making the point here that in this age of educational transformation, we are perhaps in danger of losing sight of the value and the power of teacher talk and how talk can transform learning. Now, as I was saying, in teacher education programs, we often encourage our student teachers not to talk too much, and that's very important because, the classes are places where learners need to be engaged in talking. But still, the teacher talk is a crucial element in the classroom. The way teachers talk engages learning. It extends thinking. It encourages democratic involvement. It assesses and it teaches. It plays a number of very important roles. I wonder, before I go any further, if you might just think about the last time you were teaching, whether you're a teacher educator or a university lecturer or a school teacher. Just think briefly of the last time you were in a classroom and your talk. Just take your mind back. Just give you 20 seconds. What was your talk doing? What was it doing? How were you talking? How much were you talking? What evidence did you have of the impact of your talk on learning? These are all questions that we have to ask as teachers about how we talk in the classroom. So in this talk, I want to explore with you 4 discursive practices that matter a great deal to learning. 4 discursive practices, 4 aspects of teacher talk: correcting, questioning, engaging, and fostering qualities of mind. 4 different aspects of teacher talk. My options for giving feedback. What are my options for asking questions? What are my options for nurturing qualities of mind? Teachers need to know practices in these areas, and teachers need to know about this. So I want to argue, therefore, that that each of these processes deserves serious attention by practicing teachers and by teacher educators in particular. In that, no, teachers need to be talking in ways that encourage and nurture 21st century learning. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. That's the brief. Just 3 of us. Well, thank you, Stephen. Both Stephen Hall and I studied at Victoria, and others have visited. Zamrudi, you've visited. Victoria's in Wellington, which you may or may not know is the capital city in Wellington. Nice little place in the South Pacific. It doesn't have South Pacific temperatures, just be warned, it is pretty cold, but it's a nice little place. And my office is, I don't know, somewhere around there. Oh no, somewhere just over there, looking out across. And that's kind of the view that I get from my office in Wellington. So it's a lovely place to visit. If you want to come and visit me in Wellington, if you want to study at Victoria, do a PhD, come and talk to me. It's a great place to be. Just one more thing about Victoria University of Wellington. You can see a picture here from 1961. This is the first graduation ceremony of the English Language Institute, which was funded by the Colombo Plan, foreign aid into the Asian region. And our first group of graduating teachers were a group of 15 teachers from Indonesia. And since 1961, we've worked very closely with the Asia-Pacific region, nurturing language teachers from this region. And so our work with IPBA in the BEd TESOL from 2002 through to 2009, I think it was very much part of an ongoing engagement and connection to this part of the world. So I love being here. I feel that the institute I work in has very strong roots in this part of the world, and I'm doing my best to keep those roots strong and healthy. And so again, thank you, Iqbal, and Dr. Naga for inviting me to this conference. It's a real honour. Okay, back to the talk for today. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you an outline of the setting the scene education reforms at the moment. Then I'm going to take you through these 4 teacher talk processes and look at each one in turn, and then conclude with some suggestions for teacher education and for education more generally. Well, let me set the scene. A wonderful quote from Nelson Mandela: "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." That's very aspirational, isn't it? It puts you as teachers and teacher educators and lecturers, it puts you in the hot seat. You're the weapon, if you like. But it seems to me that the change that is possible can be change for the good or change for the bad. It's not always that the change is good. And I think we have to keep that in mind. And having acknowledged the power of educational reform, we also are faced by this problem. And a quote from Price's book. What's the last line? Except, it seems, educational reform. Right? So on the one hand, the power of education. On the other hand, when we look at social change and the speed of change around us, the way that young learners, that youngsters are transforming the way they engage with the world through technology. But education, very slow to move. Structures that are rigid, classrooms that look like they did 60, 50, 100 years ago, and so forth. You know, in this context of change, the top-down mandate is for 21st century learning, 21st century skills. The top-down, the Ministries of Education, the blueprint that you've got in Malaysia, which is an inspirational document. But it talks about the central role of communication, of creativity, decision-making, and critical thinking in education. So this is what we're aiming for. These are the goals. These are the outcomes. And yet here we are faced by these 21st century aspirations on the one hand and 19th century structures on the other, with the teacher kind of squeezed in the middle there, right? And so a shift is needed. We're faced by new challenges, we're faced by new technologies, we're faced by new opportunities. We've got these new goals, 21st century goals. And this calls for a new pedagogy. As Fullan and Langworthy in their wonderful book, A Rich Seam, say, we need to move from delivery of content to a pedagogy of coaching. And I want to just take you through this notion of a pedagogy of coaching, if you don't mind, for a few minutes, before we go back to looking at teacher talk, because I think it lays the groundwork. Now, this is not going to be very easy to see. This is the book that Fullan and Langworthy wrote, A Rich Seam. I'll have to explain this to you because you won't be able to see it very well. They argue that in old pedagogies, probably the pedagogies that are around today, by and large, the foundation is content knowledge. You know the content of your subject. If you're a maths teacher, you know your maths. If you're a science teacher, you know your maths. If you're an English teacher, you know your grammar. You know the rules, you know how to talk about language, right? So you've got this notion of strong content knowledge, and the goal is content mastery. Content mastery. The students have to require the content. Up here you've got the pedagogic capacity, which is kind of bolted on. You know, yes, you need to know how to teach a bit, you need some basic teaching skills. And bolted on top of that is kind of an added extra, is technology. You know, it's that you wheel the projector into the classroom and you play a YouTube clip for 5 minutes and you feel like you've done your technology bit for the class, right? It's that kind of clip-on mentality about technology. They say the new pedagogies that are actually already upon us in terms of what learners need require us to think very differently about these 3 dimensions, about technology, about pedagogic capacity, and about content. They argue that technology is ubiquitous. It's everywhere now. Trying to squeeze it out or put it into the first 5 minutes of the classroom is living in the dark ages. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So we need to acknowledge that in our instruction. At the foundation here, instead of having content knowledge, we have pedagogic capacity. It's the capacity of teachers to engage learners in communication, to engage learners in thinking critically, decision-making, discovering, experimenting, finding out. So pedagogic capacity is down there. And content knowledge is seen to be something that teachers and learners engage with together. Rather than it being a purely sort of a top-down transmission from teacher to learners, it's engaged with together on the platform of really innovative pedagogy. Because you need to understand that when you're dealing with ubiquitous technology, you can't go back to top-down transmission anymore. Because the learners don't need you to tell them the stuff. They can go online and find it, right? Basically, the role that you had as the font of all knowledge ain't there anymore. But your job increasingly becomes working with learners, engaging with all that knowledge which is available at their fingertips. You become the curator. You're curating opportunities. You're curating just like an art curator curates the best pictures to put on the wall. You're curating the best websites, the best links that we can use with a particular topic to learn a particular skill. So this is the new context in which I want to talk about teacher talk. Okay, so far? It's kind of interesting that, giving a talk like this is a bit like the old pedagogy, isn't it? I'm just talking, yab, 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 yab. So I'm not really preaching, I'm not really doing what I'm preaching or preaching what I'm doing. There was some interesting research conducted at MIT and Harvard by Rosalind Pritchard, I think it was, and they looked at students' brain patterns when they were in classes and lectures. They found that the brain activity was about the same as if the students were asleep. So the students in classes, they were monitoring brain activity. It was equivalent to sleep state. Okay, new pedagogies for language teaching. So Fullan and Langworthy talk about the essential role of rethinking the pedagogy that we use in the classroom. Well, in terms of language learning, because they weren't thinking of language learning, they were approaching education more generally. In language learning and teaching, what have we got? Well, we've got learner-centered classrooms. We've got communicative language teaching, which has been with us for 40 years, I suppose, 45 years. Task-based language teaching, project-based learning, and there's a great website, the National Foreign Language Resource Centre at University of Hawaii has got fabulous resources on project-based learning. If anybody is interested in project-based learning and hasn't seen that website, I'd strongly encourage you to do so. Technology-enhanced language learning. So we've got all these great new movements happening, design thinking and so on, in language learning. That's good. And in these movements, communicative language teaching, TBLT, project-based learning, the teacher has a really important role as a designer and facilitator of learning, right? So you're sort of seeing the shift to designing learning opportunities, facilitating learning opportunities, structuring the opportunities so the learners do the learning and discovering and the learners are actively learning. That's great. But in focusing on tasks and technology, have we forgotten some other aspects of the teacher's role? Have we really increased teacher capacity, and particularly in the area of discursive skills, are we, in teacher education programs for example, are we equipping teachers to be discursively excellent in the way they manage a class? Because even when you're running tasks and projects, teacher talk plays a profound role in motivating, enhancing, extending learning, challenging and questioning. And that's what I want to focus on today. So now we move on to the main part of my talk, which is teacher talk for the 21st century, teacher talk and 21st century skills. A long way back, Craig Chaldron, 1988 I think it was, did a study of teacher talk in classrooms and found that teachers talked for about 60% of the time in, I think, multilingual, bilingual classrooms in his study. Actually, these are immersion think is critical is nurturing or developing qualities of mind, and in particular fostering a growth mindset. I'm really influenced here by reflection, educational thought in the UK, and this particular book, Education Forward, Moving Schools into the Future, by David Price, or edited by David Price. And they look very critically at the state of education in the UK, and it's not a very pretty picture. And they make this comment here: millions of parents see school making their children brittle, conservative and anxious in their attitudes to learn. That, you know, she comes home from school and her spirit's been kind of crushed, and you've got to get that spirit back up again to go back to school, you know. And she's a robust young thing. She's great, but, you know, like you see, you know, I'm sure other parents will have that same experience of your children sort of being battle scarred by the experience of schooling. If society is to be effective and people are to be fulfilled, it's their spirit and outlook on life that will be as vital as the knowledge and skills they acquire. Indeed, important knowledge and skills are more likely to develop when worth, self-worth, and spirit are secure. So this is the point that, again, within a 21st century context, we want our learners to come out of the classroom not just with stronger proficiency in English, of course, but with those deeper foundations of qualities of mind that come from being in a community where they are nurtured and supported by what's going on in the classroom. The growth mindset literature has been around for quite a long time. Carol Dweck did her early research on this 20, 30 years ago now. How many of you are familiar with growth mindset work? It's quite popular, right? So it's, you know, widely distributed in education spheres around the world. The idea of a growth, well, let me just talk you through her research briefly. I will almost meet the deadline, I think, if you can. So imagine this, Carol Dweck got this large group of learners, 9 to 12-year-old learners. She divided them into two groups. So this is one group over here. You guys are one group, you guys are the other. All right? You all did the same problem-solving task. You all did the same problem-solving task, and no matter how well you performed in the task, you were all told you got 80%. You know, you got 8 out of 10, 80% right? But this group over here, you were said, boy, you guys are really intelligent. You guys did well because you were just sharp. Over here, this group were told, the way you approached that problem was really interesting. That was a really thoughtful and interesting and way to deal with the problem. You worked hard, you solved that problem. You know, good work. So the difference was the kind of feedback, the kind of message that's been given to the learners about the mindset. Is it fixed? You guys are fixed, right? You're intelligent. You're just naturally intelligent. You've got it. You guys, man, you worked hard. You know, and your hard work led to results. So what happens when the learners were all given another task? They were given a range of tasks to choose from. This group here chose the simpler tasks to make them look bright. This group over here chose more challenging tasks because they liked to work hard. They liked reward from effort. When there were problems, this group gave up more easily. This group persisted. When there was criticism or negative feedback, this group disengaged. This group learnt from it. When the success of others was reported, this group felt threatened in 86% of the cases, I think, and this group learnt from it. What did they do that got them the good result? I'm really interested to find out what they did. In terms of exaggerating how well they did, 38% of this group exaggerated how well they did compared to, I think, 12% in this group over here. So you can see a whole lot of results come from teacher talk, the way the teacher is framing the nature of the achievement. So you've got a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. The growth mindset, I can get smarter, learning's my goal, if it makes me stronger, higher achievement. There's lots of ways I'll have to rush through this very quickly because I can see that pressure's on. Oh, I've got Andy Murray over here just to keep you awake. So how do we cultivate a growth mindset? Briefly, it's avoid praising intelligence and share effort. So it's not just a matter of saying, oh yes, you guys, you worked really hard, but it's being specific about the praise. That particular strategy you used was good. So it's being very specific about what you're affirming strategic effort. Using diverse teaching strategies, using gamification elements such as effort points. I've got a Samsung phone somewhere, and I get X points if I use the artificial intelligence. It tells me, oh, that's good, you've got more X points. And it's quite motivating. Kids are really motivated by X points. Talking about a growth mindset with your students, student teachers, or with learners. There's a few other ones there. I think the key actually for us, if we are teacher educators, is to ask, have we got a growth mindset? I think it's important not just to think about teachers out there, but actually each of us, because if we have a growth mindset, we will pass that on. I'll just skip over that because time's running out. So now to summarise, 3 slides left, and I will be within a minute of my time. So what have we talked about? Do you have any clue? I'll tell you what, I'll take that off, and I'll give you 30 seconds just to think about what have we talked about. What do you remember? And maybe talk to somebody beside you. What have I talked about in the last 40 minutes which has made any... this is what I want. Yeah, that was just an excuse for me to get another drink of water. All right, so just to recap, what have we talked about in a nutshell? I began by arguing that new pedagogies for deep learning are needed, and that in these new pedagogies, pedagogic capacity trumps content knowledge. It beats content knowledge. What's important is teachers with pedagogic capacity. Pedagogic capacity to work within a ubiquitous, technologically enhanced environment in particular. But pedagogic capacity is seen in current language learning pedagogies, in the way it's seen. I think there's a slight danger that we underestimate or that we undersell